everyone, and welcome to ShadowCat Looming. Today we will be doing this 3D little Capricorn for Thanksgiving. I've got two similar ones here. This one has a little less of a curl, this one has a little more of a curl. So you can do whichever one you like today with us. This one also is a little bit thicker around the outer edge. So if you want it like that, you'll start with 2 bands. Otherwise, this is the edge we'll be doing today where it's a little bit thinner, and this is just 1 band. So let me give you guys a quick view of my notes this time. This is a different style. This is more of my shorthand notes. So if you want, you can pause for a second and see what we're going to be doing. This tells the number of bands for each line. This is each layer we're putting on. This is how to put the bands on, either 2 bands 1 time around. This is saying that the first layer is 8. It's 12 sections around, 12 pegs that will be used, and then 24 bands total. So that's what that same outline is going to be all the way down. I'm just going to show you guys a quick 2 seconds here. If you want, you can skip the notes section, but it's only a few seconds. And if you do want to write it down, remember you can just pause the screen and write it down. It's only 2 pages. And it's a little bit like the witch hat and the pilgrim hat that I have out there, but a little bit different again. Alright. It'll be a little over 100 bands that we'll be needing for today. So make sure you've got them. Let's begin. These are the 2 colors that I used before. This is Rainbow Loom's Caramel Brown. And then this one is Rainbow Loom's Persian White. Persian White means it's the dual layer band, so half of it's white and half of it's this gold color. So I call that gold usually. We do sell these bands and many more at our store. So if you would like to buy them, go ahead and visit us on the web. It is www.partyonsupplies.net and see what you think there if you're needing any supplies. Today we'll be using the Caramel Brown. So these colors of bands. Now the first layer, we're going to be doing 1 band, and when we put it on, we're going to make a figure 8. We're going to keep doing this all the way around the outer edge until we have used 12 bands. That means we'll have 6 on the right and 6 on the left. So we'll count 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 5. And 6 begins to turn. Remember, these are all single bands formed into 8s. And now 6 to the left. I like to be symmetrical, so I'm going to always continue going around in the same exact fashion each time. It's not as important to do that. It'll still get created if you don't. But if you follow along exactly as I'm doing it, later on when we start moving bands and moving pegs and all of that, it's going to be a little bit easier to follow along because then yours will match the same moves that I'm doing. And as usual, after we put our bands on, we'll push them down. Now, this project is a little bit more of an advanced level because it does deal with a lot of bands on top of each other, and we're going to be gradually moving the creation up as we go. So it's going to be a little tricky later on. Our second layer is going to be 1B1X, so 1 band 1 time around. That's just going to follow right on top of the first layer. One band, one time around. Now, after we've done that, if you turn your board sideways, you can actually see the two different layers here. This first layer is the crazy 8 layer, the 8s that we laid down, and this second layer is the top layer. We're going to want to be grabbing the two bands below on the bottom layer, and we're going to be pulling them out, up, and over to the center. So usually I find it easier if you actually hold the board and grab it like that from the side so you can see it. But if you're more comfortable with keeping the board sturdy, you can also reach in. Now, if you only grab one band at a time like that, it's perfectly fine to go back and grab the second one and do them individually. Whatever makes it easier for you. Again, once we've weaved that on over, we want to push our bands down for more layers on top. This is going to be our third layer. It's going to be 1B1X. And again, we're going to go around the outer side here. And we're going to do the same thing we just did a minute ago. And again, we're going to have two bands on the bottom layer, two bands on the top layer, and we can do two bands out, up, and over to the center. Now, careful when you're doing this that you don't knock off any of these top two bands. If you do, it can start to unravel on you. You gotta get it repaired as quickly as you can. And of course, push it down again. Now, if you look at my notes here, this gives you a good numbering on where we're at. We're going to start doing these condensed sections. That's going to be every single time now. And the way our board is set up, each of these numbers is a peg. So we're going to be counting from the outer side here, 1, 2, 3. Here, I'll do it with the board here. Alright, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Now I'm going to be referring to these numbers as I go. In case you're following along with the notes, that'll make it a little easier, or you're trying to write them down for yourself. But I'll keep following with those numbers, and I'll always call this bottom point here 7. So I'll keep moving that up. So to condense, we're going to start condensing on this bottom left corner, and we're going to condense 8 to 7 and 8 to 9. So what that means is we're going to grab the top band, and we're going to see which direction it's coming from. We want to go the opposite way it's coming from. This one is coming from up here. You can see that when you give it a light little tug. So that means that one's going to go down here. This next one, when I do the same thing, you can see it's coming from the bottom. So we're going to go up to the top with it. Now this peg 7 and this peg 9 here will actually have 3 bands on it. All the rest are going to have 2 bands. So when we loop this next time, we're going to want to catch all 3 of those. Make sure those are pressed down. And now we'll do our next layer on top. Instead of it being 12 bands all the way around like we just did, since we condensed that one section, it's going to only be 11 bands around. It's just going to keep going down by 1 all the way through. See, here is where we condense, so we actually want to grab from here to here. So it's going to be a little bit longer of a band right there. I don't know if you guys saw that band when I put it down, but apparently it rolled all the way off my desk even. Alright, so now we've got one single band on top. We've got our 2 layers as we've been seeing this all the way through. And we're starting to get a little bit of a build up here in the middle. So I'll go ahead and grab our bottom 2 bands. Careful not to knock off the top 2 bands. Again, if I'm going too fast, you can just pause the video and catch up to me. Now, we're coming back to this where we first adjusted. And this one, peg number 9 here, is actually going to be 3 bands. Be careful that you get all 3 bands. And you leave the 2 on top. Same with this bottom one here, peg 7. That is also going to be 3 bands. So make sure you catch all 3 of those. Then we'll want to push our bands down because we're going to have more layers on top. And before we go on to the next layer, we're going to want to condense again. So now when we condense, we're going to be condensing this bottom right one here, 6, and 6 is going to go to 5, and 6 is going to go to 7. Same rules as before, opposite of where it came. So this band here is coming from 7, so it's going to go to 5. And this band here coming from 5, so it's going to go to 7. And the thing that we're going to do different this time, since it's such a stretch here, we're actually going to pick it up and we're going to move these bands from this peg up to this peg. When we do that, we want to make sure that we get this inner side up and over that center peg, and you don't want to lose the bands off of your side pegs here. So what I do, I'll take my fingers and I'll hold down onto the side peg so it doesn't come off. Then I'll stick my hook through, grab all of those bands, I'll actually pull it up over that middle peg and push it down. Then put those bands back onto that peg. Now make sure you've got all of your bands, all 3 bands on there before you take your hook out. And then if anything started to come up like that one right there, make sure to catch it before you totally let go. So now we've just condensed it up a section. As you see, it goes and it gets smaller as it goes. Push those down. It's really going to get thick in here toward the end. Now we'll go 1 band all the way around the outside again. Before, I believe we were doing 11 bands. Now it'll be 10 bands since we condensed one more. Okay, now we're going to be looping again, and this time when we loop, bands or pegs 5 and 7 are going to have 3 bands. All the rest will have 2 bands that we're looping over. Be careful not to knock off those other top bands. And push them down again. And now we'll be condensing again. And we'll condense from this side over here. And this is peg 10. So peg 10 will go to, is it 10? 9. 9, this is peg 9, sorry. Peg 9, and this will go to peg 10 and to peg 7. We'll grab that out and we'll see where it's coming from. It's coming from the one up, so we'll go down to the one down, 7. We'll take that one, see it's coming from the bottom, and we'll go up to the top here. Push those down. Again, keeping to the same rhythm of things. I'm going to put single bands around the outer edge. And just like we did when we first started condensing, we want to make that one down here at the bottom a little bit more stretched of a band. This one right here. And now we want to be looping the out, up, and over, and this one, number 7 and number 10, will have 3 bands on the bottom. Make sure you get the 3 on those, and 2 on the rest. And if you ever get confused as you're going where you're at or how many you've gone and done, how many rubber bands you've done on each peg, just go ahead and turn it sideways and count your bands that you've got left. You should always have 2 bands left. If you've got more than 2, you want to get that extra one looped in there and caught up. So now, since we're back to everything having 2 bands, we'll condense this one here. If you remember how we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 is going to 4, and 5 is going to 7 because we keep moving that 7 up. So that band's going to the bottom center, so we move it up. That band's going to the top right, so we move it down. And just like we did before, we're going to want to move this up here. So we're going to pick up our boards. We're going to hold it at the 2 pegs so the bands don't come off when we move. I'm going to reach in and grab all of those. Make sure not to leave any bands on that side. All moved over. And get your bands placed back onto the next peg others are still good. And now we have condensed again. Now we'll be beginning layer 7. Layer 7 is 8 bands. So we're going to place 8 bands around the outer edge. Single band. Now we'll loop the bottom bands out, up, and over again, keeping in mind that peg 4 and peg 7 will have 3 bands at the bottom here, and the rest will have 2. And pushing down once again. This is where you can start to really tell that it's really a little thicker down here than it is up here. And that's because we keep moving it up, so it's going to end up getting really thick down there. So now we'll start to condense again. I'll condense at the bottom left as usual. We'll take the top band. Mine is coming from the middle center up here, so I'm going down to peg 7. And the second one here, coming from the bottom, so I'm going to go to the top with it. Push those down. Now we're going to be doing layer 8. And layer 8 is going to be all single bands. Go around the outer edge, and this time it's going to be 7 bands. Down here, this is where we started to condense, so we want to make sure that one's stretched a little bit longer. And again, we'll loop the bottom 2 bands out, up, and over on all of them, except number 7 and number 4. No, sorry. Number 7 and number 11 are going to have 3 bands on the bottom. Let's start with those, make sure we get the 3s. All the rest are going to be 2 bands. And push them down, make room for more on top. And this time we're going to be condensing on the bottom right. We're going to condense 4 to 3. And then we're going to condense 4 to 7. And once again, we want to move that bottom peg up 1. We're going to be holding down on the upper pegs. We'll grab our bottom bands. This gets a little trickier here, so make sure that none of the side bands come off as you're making the move. And just stick it right on down in there, in between all of your pegs. Now I find here if I twist my hook so that it can catch the bands, it has better control over putting the bands down. Even at that, you still may need to push down your bands a little bit to have a little bit more room. Remember, if you're working with the band at the bottom of the hook, it's a little easier to control than if it's all the way up on the hook. Sometimes you may need to slide it to the end of the hook area just to have that control. Alright. If you're following along with my notes, we are now on the second page. So doing really good, guys. This is going to be layer 9. Layer 9 will be 6 bands going around the outside. All single bands again. This time, peg 3 and peg 7 will have 3 bands, so make sure you catch all 3 bands on those 2 pegs. Keep them out, up and over. And those are a little trickier, so if you need to only grab a band at a time on that, that's alright too. Just as long as you get all 3 of them. Eventually. Now here, it's a little hard to see what bands are what. So if you come across something like that, sometimes it's helpful to separate out your layers, and then you can see that, oh, those are the 2 bottom bands. Alright. You know what it's time for? Condensing. So let's condense on this bottom left peg here. This is going to be peg 11. That top one's going to go to peg 7. And then peg 11 to peg 12. Push that down. Now we're going to be on layer 10. It's going to be 5 bands around. 1, 2, and 4 is going to be longer stretched. And 5. And this time peg 12 and peg 7 are going to have 3 bands. Make sure you get all 3 on that. Soon we'll adjust the whole board layout. Alright. You know what it's time for! This will be our last condense in this style. So, we'll condense. What am I saying? Alright. Grab peg number 3, grab the top band. And that's going to go to peg number 2. Peg 3's bottom band. It's going to go to peg number 7. Now, let me see. Alright. So we're going to stretch our bands a little bit on this one, because we're not going to condense to that middle point. This is going to be 4 bands. This one's going to stretch a long one. This one's going to stretch a long one. It's going to be a short one. Alright, so peg 2 and peg 7 are going to have 3 bands each. Be very careful here, because with so many bands, it's really easy to knock off those top 2 bands. If you need, you may need to hold them down as you're looping it over. Something like that there. Alright, so now all of them have 2 bands around the outer edge. We're going to readjust our boards now. We're going to need 4 holding sticks. All I'm doing is putting them in, sliding it through, making sure that all of the bands around the peg are on the holding stick here. And a good way to check if your holding sticks are dark and not see-through like this, you can pull it out. If it pulls out all the bands, then they're all on it. We want to put a holding stick in each one of the little pegs. We're going to lift it up carefully by all of these sticks. Now, I like to just pull it off each peg individually for a second until it can be situated onto the sticks. Then we'll take them all, pull it off together. We want to just pull down. Now, because we kept shrinking the board up as we moved, that's why we've got one side being a little bit more open and a little bigger than the other side, which gives for a good cornucopia. We'll get all of those lined up together, and now we want to squeeze our creation flat. After we've squeezed it flat, we're trying to squeeze it flat enough to put it between these rows. Now, actually, if you haven't adjusted your back piece, you're going to want to do that. Normally, I have mine near the tops and bottoms. I adjusted it beforehand for this. So go ahead and take a second right now if you need, get your hook, maneuver it off, adjust it so that's from up there to down here. We want a little bit of space. And we're going to be working with about 4 of these top pegs, either side, whichever one you feel more comfortable with. So make sure there's a little bit more space underneath that. Once you've done that, we're going to want to slide our cornucopia in through here. And we want to put all of these bands on the 4 pegs. You want to make sure that you get them in order so they're not crisscrossed. I'm just going to slide it from the stick onto the peg. Once you get one down, it kind of makes it a little easier to tell which direction it's going to be going around there. Just keep working your way around, getting it replaced back onto the board. And there's our last one. Move those out of the way. We are down to layer 12. Layer 12 is going to be 2 bands, and it's going to be on all 4 pegs. Now, if you want it to be like this one, a little more stouty and not as curled, you can keep using 2 bands for a little bit here, and then you just kind of stop and do the ending that I'll be doing in a minute. Otherwise, if you want it to actually curl around and make a little bit of a tail in there, then continue following along, because that's what this is going to do here. So go ahead and grab the bottom 2 bands and loop them out, up, and over. Push those down. For layer 13, we're going to be doing another 2 bands. Now, if you can't put them on 2 at a time, 1 at a time is perfectly acceptable as well. Once you've gotten those 2 bands on, Grab your bottom two bands, loop them out and over. Now we'll start making the tip a little more pointed. So we'll be doing one band one time around all four of them. Loop the bottom two out, up, and over. Grab another single band. Around all four of them. This is our second single band. Keep pushing down. If there's no room to push down, you can always pull a cornucopia a little bit further down too on its own. But then it rests a little bit higher on the board. That was two bands. This is our third band. Depending how long you want the tail, you can do it either 4 or 5 times. I found to be pretty good numbers there. That is 3. And here is 4. When we loop out, up, and over, it's going to be one band all these times. And I'm actually going to do 5 here. Put a little more of a tail on this one. Alright. After you have done that, got one single band on all 4 pegs. We will, let's see, 2. We'll take all of these, we'll gather them up on our hooks. Going in order is usually the easiest. Remember, you gotta pull up through like that. You can't pull it out because there's too much underneath there. Now we have a long tail on a cornucopia. Now we want to take 2 more bands. We're going to pull these 2 bands through the 4 bands on the hook. I put the 2 bands on here, pull down on the hook so it has some tension. I put it onto my hooks initially facing up. Then I flip it over. This makes this piece look like an 8. And down here, if you pull down on the thumb and the finger area, you can actually have a little bit of a triangle gap through there in which you can just easily slide your hook right on through, then turn it back so it's facing up again, and reclaim the bands on the other side. Now, what I'm going to do is a slip knot for both of the bands at the same time. So take the back 2 bands, pull it over the front band, make that tight there. And to get that little bit more of a curl in the tail, we're going to find out how we would like it to sit first of all. That takes just a little bit of shaping, maneuvering, all of that. It'll naturally have a curl one way or another. It should naturally have the curl the same way as the wider piece up here, because that's where we started condensing all the way through. Which means, if it looks like that, this is the way that our tail is going to end up curling. We can go in with our hook inside all the way as close to the top as you can get. Let's see. There Good one. We're going to grab one band of the two bands from the slip knot. Now, when we pull it through, I found it's useful to pinch here and kind of pull up so that your bands don't get stuck at the top. And we're just going to pull on that. And as you pull on that, you'll notice that it kind of starts to bunch it up there and kind of starts to curl it on its own already. Now, if you like, so you don't lose that band, you can put a holding stick through it temporarily too. So that's what I'm going to do, and just make it a little bit easier to get to in a minute. This top band, you're going to want to weave a little bit into the actual top spinal piece there. And what I mean by that, and keep wanting to curl it too, because it'll help give it that natural bit of a curl as well. But we're going to go through, and we're going to find a couple bands here. We're going to go through to the other side. Let's take those two. I'm sure you can't see with the tag there. Alright. I'm going to take those two, which is on that top piece where we want the curl line. Start to pull that through there, and as you see, as I pull, it starts to pull down a little bit more on that tail. And then I'm going to come back and weave it from the other side through that same line. Pull through there. And it's over here, so I'll come from the right side now. And grab that tail. Sure, I'll grab that tail. I'll pull that through. And now, once you've got a curl that you kind of like, I kind of like that curl right there, we're going to tie this off so that it stays to that point and nice and tight. You know, I'm actually going to go through one more. Yeah. There we go. Now to tie it off, we'll see where it's at on this outside. We want to come in with our hook, and we'll want to come through that same spot. You can see, here's my band, here's where my hook's coming through. We'll catch the band, and pull it inside. So now we've got a band on this hook and a band on this hook. We'll take both of those and we'll end up knotting them together. What we want to do is we want to roll the cornucopia inside out just for a minute. You don't want to go all the way inside out because you want to keep your tail nice and curled there at the end. But enough that you can see, because right there, that's where that one band is coming from. So once you can see where both of the bands are, take them off of their hooks here. I like to put a little knot in it. It's just, you know, a normal cross band over band, band over band. It's a little tough to do right here. It might take a little bit of time. I'll put my finger through, grab that, make it nice and tight there. Do the same thing once again. And once you've got a nice little knot there, you can tuck those little ties into the top a little bit more even. Then roll your cornucopia back down. And if you give a little push right there where they're tucked in, and curl up on the tail, it kind of curls it a little bit more. And there you go. You have a little cornucopia. You can always make this method a little bit bigger, do it on the entire board. You'll have a bigger cornucopia, big enough maybe to put some full little vegetables and things like that in it. But there you go. Hope you enjoyed the cornucopias. And remember, come check out the website, www.partyonsupplies.net. Take a look at my bands, take a look at my other videos out there. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you're thinking of these. I look forward to seeing that. And if you do one of your own, please attach a picture out there and let me see it. I'd love to see how they came out. Alright, thanks. Hope you guys enjoyed. Happy Thanksgiving. Bye, guys. Hello everyone. You have either arrived here by watching through the credits and seeing the extra video clip at the end, or you've been following through with the Santa hat, with the little notes that have been at the top of the screen. If you're following the Santa hat, remember so far we've changed the first layer to be 2 bands, and then we changed one of the next layers to be white. So that's going to give us the big fluffy frill of the hat. And your hat should be looking like this so far too. Because when we did the 3 at the end, we've tucked 2 of them in, given that curl, but we still got 1 left over. And that's going to be to start to connect the little ball that goes on the end. So let's make that piece next. To do that piece, we will need our boards again. We'll need 1 red band and 5 white bands. We'll take the red band and put that one down singly first at the top. The next set is going to have 4 white bands on it. If you can't put them all on at once, that's fine too. There, I just put 3 on, and there's 4. Then we'll do a capping band at the bottom of that. And it'll be a 1 band 4 times around cap. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And grab our hooks, pull the cap band back, grab the 4 bands at the bottom. You may need your finger to help hold down the cap band so it doesn't come out off as you're bringing the bands out. And this one you gotta be a little gentle with because it's 1 single band and there's a lot of bands there. So it might just take a little sliding it back and forth. If you go too quickly, you may end up breaking that red band. That red band is going to be our slip knot. So we've got 2 layers here. You can see the upper and the lower layer. We're going to want to take the lower layer, pull it out, up and over to the center. Then we'll take off the upper layer, give it a little bit of a tug, not too tight though. And then once we put our hook down, we'll want to grab it again, a little closer to the base here. Pull it again, and do that once more to get that slip knot a little tighter there. Not too much or you may break that. Go ahead and take that off the board. Make sure you don't have any loose bands or anything like that. Then we'll connect the 2. To connect the 2, we want to slip knot the 2 red bands together. So that means I'm going to put the bands from the little white ball through the bands on the hat. Then I'm going to put the little ball through itself. Pull that down. If you pull nice and gentle, your bands won't get twisted too much or anything. I still twisted a little bit there, but that's alright. Then we'll need our hooks again. We'll find 2 bands somewhere near the top here. I've got this little spot right here. I think it's almost looking like a cap band, you could say. And I'm going to go through those 2 or 3 bands. Don't want too many more bands than that, or it's actually going to make it pretty hard to pull all of these bands through. grab the chain there. Now pull that on through. And once we've gotten it through, you can see looks kind of like that. We're just going to take and tie this off by looping it over the little end piece. And you see there's still some slack here. So we're going to take it and pull it out, twist it just like it's a cap band. Loop it back over. And there's still some more space, so I'm going to do it a third time. Pull it out, twist it, and loop it back over. And if you want, you could do it a fourth time too. But I think 3 is pretty good there. Well, maybe I'll try a fourth one. See what it looks like. I mean, you can always undo it too if you don't like how it looks. Actually, I like 4 a little better. Yeah. Alright. So now we have a little tassel on the end of our Santa hat. Hope you guys like it. And hope you like the cornucopia as well. Happy Thanksgiving and Merry Christmas. And take a look at our store if you're needing any bands or anything like that, supplies. www.partyonsupplies.net. Thanks for watching. Have a good one, guys. Bye.